So in this video, we will be discussing about what is data science, what is machine learning, how machine learning algorithm works, what is big data, and all those concepts combining how actually we can achieve from data to insight. Okay. So first thing first, so we are discussing about data science with R, but actually what is data science? So data science is nothing but the technique by which we can actually achieve data driven decision. So whenever we take any decision, instead of our gut feelings on knowledge, if we take the decision based on the data, that is actually data driven decision. And to actually achieve this thing, the science is actually data science. Now think about very high level perspective. When I said that all the organization are actually collecting data, so that data can be internal to the organization, or external data, and after collecting they are storing it. So they can store it in a big data Hadoop system, or maybe in a SQL database, or maybe in NoSQL database, or maybe if it is a streaming data, so they can store it in a streaming database. If it is a time series data, they can store it a time series database. So there are different kind of option, so which is a whole different discussion altogether. But high level, try to understand in any organization, they collect all those data, then they store the data depending on how the data is, and then they process the data. So sometime you need a requirement, you have to process real time, but in some time you have the requirement, you have to process in batch overnight. But once the collection, store and process is done, then you have to analyze. So you have to analyze mean what? Depending on the use cases, whatever we discussed earlier, you have to achieve all those use cases. So now, irrespective of whatever the use case is, these are the two things we do. So we use any machine learning algorithm. So maybe we sometime use forecasting, sometime use predictive modeling, or optimization, simulation, or artificial intelligence, or whatever. Ultimately, we come up with a system. It can be a recommender system which can tell you what is the next best offer, or it would give you a action item from your prescription that you have to actually do this, or it can simply give you a contextual intelligence that since the price of the raw material is high, you should not actually buy the product right now. So everything and anything is associated with a action item, and from the action you can achieve these two things, which is actually your ultimate objective, either cost reduction or profit maximization. Now, yeah. So now, what is machine learning? If you remember, if you are familiar with any of the programming like C, C++, Java, .NET, or simple any kind of programming, then you would know that you actually create a rule. So you create the algorithm and you pass a new data. So suppose you have written a if else statement. Okay. So suppose you are trying to create a system which can actually detect a spam. So in a mail, you are trying to you are looking at each of those mail and you are trying to figure out whether this is spam or not. If it is spam, then you will put it into spam folder, right? Now if you try to do in a traditional programming way, what you would do, you would create different rules. So you would write if else statement, while statement, and all those things. A new data would come, which is a new mail, and based on your program, it would give you an output whether this is spam or not. But these are actually rule based approach, where your rule based would accept or reject based on the rule, but it won't change to the situation. Suppose you have created a rule, if the mail contains more than 10 images, then it's a spam. But unfortunately, there is actually a good mail from your friend which has more than 10 images, that was actually not a spam, and your program has marked it as a spam. But once you say that no, this is not a spam, it won't learn again. But if you see in our Gmail, what happens, you try to actually train your model, you say that no, this is not a spam. So next time whenever it comes from your friend with more than 10 images, it won't mark it spam. Why? Because the Gmail spam system is actually ML based. It's not a rule based. So what is difference between ML based and rule based? So it actually adapts. It actually adapts to the situation and it improves with each new data. So what we do actually, we have a historical data. So historical data is nothing but historical email data from last 6 months or 1 year. Whatever the mail came to you, those are my historical data. And I have output also. So most of the time wherever you have marked it as spam and whether you said that no, this is not a spam, those are your output, whether it can be spam or not. Now I will train a machine learning algorithm. I will put some maybe SVM, or there are a lot of other algorithms. So I just pass on these data, pass on this output. My machine will learn itself and it would create an algorithm. So algorithm is nothing but a rule. So it would now say if there is more than 10 images, it's normally a spam. But if it comes from your friend, then it's not a spam. Since you have passed that historical data and output to your computer, to your system, and that system can learn using the machine learning algorithm, and next time when it comes from your friend, it won't mark it as spam. So that's how this is different. So I'm explaining it again. So rule based, what is the difference between rule based and ML based? So rule based, where you create those rules based on all those if else statement and while statement, and output comes. But in ML based, you don't write all those algorithms. Rather, you pass historical data and output, and your system actually learns itself and it creates algorithm which is adaptive in nature and improves with every new data. Now, to give you more perspective and one level down view, think this is your historical data where you have all those mails from the last 6 months. Then what you did, you divided into evaluation set and training set. So this is your training set by which you are actually training your model. So maybe you trained your model with model A with the algorithm maybe SVM, then model B maybe random forest, then model C maybe decision tree. So don't get confused about these terms. You would be actually learning all those algorithms. These are different machine learning algorithms. And once you learn it, you have to also understand how your model is performing, whether this model is good or this one or that one. That's why we have kept couple of so maybe it had 6 months of data, so we kept 5 month data as your training data set and 1 month for your evaluation set. Now on the 1 month you have the output whether this was spam or not. But now what we will do, we will try to predict from using our model. So maybe from SVM, the score, the accuracy is maybe 90%, from model B 80%, from model C 75%. So obviously model A is winner. So we will take model A based on the score. So again, I am explaining how machine learning works. As I said, machine learning, we don't create any algorithm. Rather, we pass a algorithm and it learns itself. And we said your historical data is maybe 6 month old, all the mails, and we divided into train and test. So maybe 5 month data is your training data set and 1 month is your evaluation set. And then we pass different algorithm, and then we actually evaluate the model, and based on the output we choose which one has the highest accuracy. That's how machine learning works. And think that tomorrow you have a new data set, so that would become a historical data, and that would also come into your training data set. So your model would change your rule every day or every second, and then based on that it would predict. Yeah, so as I was saying, the model is tested on an unseen data, which is your evaluation set, and the model score is calculated for each of those algorithms. Then choose the best algorithm. So I hope that gives you a high level idea about what is data science and why we are doing it. And in data science, where is machine learning and how machine learning model actually is being used and how it works. We'll be learning more and more in the further videos. But now discuss about what is big data, so that we are not confused about what is big data and machine learning and what is the relation between them. So big data, as you more familiar with 4V, but I am discussing with 3V. So first is your volume. So suppose if your data volume is so large, then you cannot store it in a simple SQL database. Okay, so that's why that would be your big data challenge. Then you have to store that terabyte and petabyte of data, or maybe your data is coming with so much velocity, so maybe from a GPS or maybe from a Twitter or from a Facebook, every time in a nanosecond there are so many tweets and so many Facebook posts, and you have to store all of them. So that again becomes a big data challenge. That's why you have to use a Hadoop system. Similarly, if your data is different in nature, so earlier we had all those data in very structured format, we can store it in a tabular form, but in today's data we cannot store it in a tabular form because they are unstructured, not structured at all, because all those video, images, text, all those things are not structured at all, those are unstructured data. So that's why we have to store it as well. So that again becomes a big data challenge. So whenever you see these three features, or maybe any one of them, either the data is so large, or the data is coming so fast, or the data is so different from a structured one, then that becomes a big data challenge, and that's why we call this as a big data. Now, since these big data are very different in nature, to actually understand, to get the insight out of this data is also very difficult, and that's why we need to have this decision science, and we need this machine learning algorithm to learn itself, because it's not that easy that manually you would actually extract the insight from the data. That's why we need all these machine learning algorithm to learn itself. In next video we'll be discussing about, so if you want to transition from IT to ML, machine learning based career, then how to do it. So we'll be discussing in our next video.